Hello everyone and welcome to a very nice game from the penultimate round of the Altibox Norway Championship. The game just ended, so I thought why not just make a video on it right away. It's Magnus Carlsen versus Yuan Yi, and both of them have had a lot of success in the Armageddons throughout this whole Norway event, so we'll see how their matchup will turn out. Again, I will not mention if this is Classical or Armageddon. I will just let you decide. It's quite an exciting game. And also we do have a nice photo of this matchup, courtesy of Leonard Otis, official photographer of the Altibox Norway Championship. There you have it, Magnus and Yuan Yi. And I don't know who the gentleman is making the first move for Magnus. But judging by the t-shirt, it's, well, obviously someone who is doing something for Von Doren. So that being said, let's check out this very nice game. Carlsen with the white pieces opens with d4. We have d5, c4, and c6. The Slav defense is on the board. Knight to f3, we have knight to f6, and now knight to c3. And now Yuan Yi captures on c4. We have e4 by Carlsen, maybe preparing e5, and now comes b5, defending the c4 pawn, so Magnus is unable to recapture immediately. And now asking Magnus, what do you want to do here? Carlsen continues bishop to e2, he just prepares the castle, and here Yuan Yi doesn't go for the most obvious idea, but he goes for b4, attacking the knight immediately, trying to get rid of the defender of the e4. And it's only move 6, but there are very few games that have actually been played that have reached this position, I think around 14. And here Carlsen plays e5. And now, what do? The knight is under attack. Of course, you don't want to move this knight and lose d4 pawn, so Carlsen just advances it. And here, there are two games in the database where knight to d5 was played, but here, b captures on c3 is a new move, so already as of move 7, Yuan Yi goes into uncharted territory. So, what does Carlsen do? Of course, he wants to recapture the piece. We have e captures on f6, and now Yuan Yi has to decide, does he want to go for this captures, and captures like this, where Carlsen will have an isolated d-pawn, or for the line that he chose, he first captures on e6, and after Carlsen captured bc3, he then went bishop to d6, so quickens the development, but it also strengthens Carlsen's center. Now, of course, you notice that Yuan Yi has a doubled c-pawn, so one thing you would definitely want to do is play c5 here, just get rid of your doubled c-pawn, and then you pretty much, you're good to go. The problem is, if you play something like this, then after bishop captures on c4, you don't really have an option of capturing here, because after knight captures, there's no good way to develop. Your king will just be stuck in the center. For example, if you play something like bishop e7, queen f3, just picks up the rook. There's no way around it. So, bishop to d6, you will have to suffer with your, well, not suffer, but you will have to endure your doubled c-pawn for the moment. We have castles by Carlsen, castles by Yuan Yi, and now knight to d2, going after the c4 pawn with the knight, and then from there, knight will also target the bishop. We have rook to e8 by Yuan Yi, rook to e1 by Magnus. And now knight to d7, getting this knight over to b6 to help out with the defense of the c4 pawn, and only now does Magnus capture. We have knight captures on c4, and now bishop to c7, not allowing this trade, of course, and bishop to f3. Carlsen grabs hold of this beautiful diagonal, and like we mentioned, it'd be great if you could get rid of this, well, isolated pawn, but for the moment it's not possible as the rook is hanging on a8. So what do you do here? First, bishop to a6, attacking the knight here that is undefended. Magnus brings it back to e3, and now comes knight to b6. And here, again, what do? You for the moment, you still can't capture. If you capture, then just queen d6 with a double attack, attacks the bishop and the h2 pawn, you're going to lose a piece here. So, after knight to b6, we have bishop to a3 by Magnus. There's no rush in capturing this. And here we have knight to c4. So what do you do here? Here Carlsen has the option of actually capturing now, because after bishop captures, yes, black will capture on a3, but now you get queen to a4, and you get this crazy position where the rook is under attack, the bishop is under attack, the knight is under attack, and here black would go for bishop to b5, and after captures here, then you would play bishop captures on h2. King captures, and now queen to b8 check will now pick up the bishop. King g1, now comes knight captures on b5, and you get this position with equal material on the board, but Magnus would have 3 pawn islands, and the king's position would be somewhat loosened, and black would have 2 pawn islands with only 1 isolated pawn on the a file. Carlsen decides against this, and he goes queen to d3, which seems like an odd decision, you know, placing your queen in front of the bishop like this, but the bishop is undefended, so if the knight moves, Magnus wants to pick up the bishop. That's his plan. Now there's a double attack against the knight here, so what do? Here, Yoongi finds a very nice idea. Rook captures on e3. So what do? Obviously, you can capture with the rook or with the pawn. If you capture with the pawn, you get this line. Knight captures on a3, and after queen captures on a6, knight to c2, not check, but, you know, forking the rooks. And after something, knight captures, rook captures, and you would get this position where it's not a bad position. You have this massive center here, but Carlsen prefers the position with the pawn on f2. So he decides for a different line. He goes rook captures on e3, knight captures on e3, and now queen captures on a6. But black still gets his knight to c2 in, attacking the bishop and the rook. Rook to d1, and only now knight captures on a3. We have queen captures on a3, and this is the position Magnus prefers. There's still this pressure here, still unable to push c5, and it will be hard to get out of this. If Carlsen just captures here, well, not for the moment, as you still don't want to run into any tricks, but the queen is guarding d6, so it's not really an issue. Here, if you go bishop d6, try and kick away Magnus's queen, he's just gonna go queen a4 with a double attack here, also putting pressure on a7, so you can't really go rook c8. And after queen c7, just g3, defend the h2 pawn, and still black will have a very hard time defending this. So after queen to a3, Yoongi played queen to d6. He says, okay, let's trade queens, and then maybe I'll be down a pawn after you capture it, but at least it's a bishop of opposite colors endgame, and you know, I will hold this to a draw. Magnus says, all right then, with queen captures on d6, bishop captures, and now the problem is, if you capture this bishop, this pawn here with the bishop, you get rook c8. Now, if you move the bishop, you lose the c3 pawn, so you have to play d5, but then after rook b8, yes, it's a nice structure here, but this bishop is now basically a pawn, and it's very unlikely that you will get this pawn all the way to c5. So not the best way to treat this position, but you know, you're at home having a lovely time. Feel free to pause the video and try to find the best idea here for white while I have a nice sip of my water. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, you are truly a master of opposite color bishop endgames. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, here Magnus played c4. And now you see the problem. Now there won't be there won't be an issue. c5 is coming, which comes with an attack on the bishop here, and only then will you recapture here, and then there's no problem of rook coming to c8. So here Yoongi takes advantage of this c4 move to get rid of the pin. Rook c8, now the pawn is guarded, but here Magnus just plays c5 with bishop to e7, and here Carlsen's plan is next. He now wants to play king f1, king e2, king d3, king to c4, get the king all the way here, and then at some point, well, if possible, get the rook all the way up there and, somehow win the c6 pawn and push these pawns to victory. So let's see if that is possible. He starts with king f1, of course, with f5 by Yoongi and king to e2. So the king march is happening. With g5 preparing g4. So first Magnus blocks with h3, king to g7. Black also wants to get the king into the game, and now king to d3. We have king to g6 and now rook to b1. The rook will now infiltrate the 7th rank via rook to b7 with h5 by black and now rook to b7. So already attacking the a7 pawn and the bishop here. With bishop to f6 now with ideas that if white starts any quick pawn grabbings, then you get a rook here, and then it will be a problem defending the d4 pawn. So here rook to d7. Carlsen doesn't allow rook to d8 and now g4 by black. Carlsen ignores this with bishop to d1, says, okay, if you want to capture, you can capture. And now king to g5. Black brings the king deeper into the game. And now, again, if you play something like capture 0 or capture 0, you're just going to get rook d8. It comes with an attack on the pawn here. And even after h4, of course, king g6 will be played. You will have to go rook c7, and then you will lose this pawn here. So you cannot allow rook to d8. Here Carlsen plays bishop to a4. Again, just putting pressure on the c6 pawn with f4 by black, and now comes f3, preparing to capture here, or maybe black can capture, it doesn't really matter. Both of it works nicely in white's favor. With rook to e8, black now grabs hold of the e3 square, so he wants to gain activity with the rook as well. With f captures, h captures, and now rook to e6, keeping an eye on the c6 pawn, but now Magnus just retreats, bishop to d1, and now he guards the g4 pawn. So all in all, he won a pawn, and now he just continues with his plan. With rook to e3, with check, king to c4, finally the king reaches the destination, and now a5. With bishop to f3, now it's no longer possible to defend the c6 pawn, and now rook to a3, going after the a2 pawn. Bishop captures on c6 with rook captures on a2, and now bishop back to e4, controlling the c2 square, so no rook to c2 check will be possible. With a4, Yuan Gui also starts pushing his pass pawn, but now comes c6. With rook to a1, now checks with c1 are possible, but just c7. With a3, and here of course you don't want to play c8 with queen, because then you would just lose that queen after rook captures on c8. But here after a3, Carlsen just played king to b3, not allowing rook to c1 check. And it was in fact in this position that Yuan Gui resigned the game, as there is nothing to do here. Whatever you play, let's say you play rook to c1, Magnus will just block it with the bishop, and next move you will bring a queen into the game. Even if a2, it is possible black can continue the game, but then you just remaneuver the rook, rook d5 check, king to h4, and now you get rook to a5, preventing any sneaky tricks from black. And after a1 queen, you will simply trade, bring a queen into the game, and now you will have a queen and bishop against bishop and rook. Of course, a completely winning game for white. So Yuan Gui, of course, calculated all of this. After king b3, he said, thank you, I've had enough, and he resigned the game. So that being said, now I will mention it, this was a game from the classical time format, and so 2 full points for Magnus Carlsen, which means that now, a short spoiler for those of you who are not interested in the results, maybe skip some 30 seconds. Magnus Carlsen is the 2019 Altibox Norway Championship winner with 1 round to spare. In round 9, he faces Fabiano Caruana with the black pieces, but he can lose tomorrow and he will still win the Altibox Norway Championship. So pretty much tomorrow he faces Caruana just for the rating and, you know, for glory. But yeah. That's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. Really an astounding performance by world champion Magnus Carlsen. I would like to thank Robert Baker, Forrest Rhodes, Rafael Gurhao, Prakar Maini, and Emir Zech for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, most likely with another game from round 8, and then tomorrow we are, finishing this championship with round 9. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.